Hello, this is Scott from Telecoms.com here at the, it must be said, improved media centre at Digital Transformation World 2026. And I'm delighted to be chatting to Roz from Omdia. Roz, I can't think of a better person to talk to at this show because somewhat inevitably the main theme, shock horror, was AI. And that's your sort of core area of concern, isn't it?
It is.
So I'll start. I can't talk with any great authority about the show because I've mainly been going around doing videos like this and other stuff. But I know from just chatting to a few people, including you, before we started recording, that a big sub-theme within AI. So there's all about the implementation of it, and we'll come back to that. And I've got some questions about the utility of it in a telecoms context, which I know you've recently done some work on. So we'll cover that. But I know that trust was a big theme, and obviously when people talk about trust and AI, I fall back on my tried and tested cliche of thinking of sort of dystopian movies like Terminator and 2001 and Matrix and that sort of thing. But in your understanding, you know, having got that out of my system, when people are talking about trust in this context here at the show, what do you think they're talking about?
I think primarily they're thinking about the fact they need to trust the output of AI. And if you don't have that trust, we are never going to get to that level 5 fully autonomous stuff. The promise of agentic is huge, but because when Gen AI first came out, you know, we heard so much about the hallucinations.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, well, if the agents are tapping into that, how do we know the agents aren't hallucinating? So I think people are starting to recognize that the only way that AI is really going to get the traction that we are hoping for is if they can trust what comes out of these systems.
Well, that feels like a big ask. You know, there's the hallucinations. This is a little bit of a tangent, as is another vice of mine. I was listening to a podcast with Mark Andreessen, the big tech entrepreneur and investor. And he was explaining that AI is now Gen AI. When it first started coming along with ChatGPT, that wasn't what they thought AI was going to be like 10 years ago.
Sure.
So I think the reason that sprung to mind is because this thing has been seems to have been a bit ad hoc and organic and that sort of thing. That's another reason to not trust it, because it looks like even the people in charge of it are slightly surprised by its development.
That is true. I think the technology has matured, developed, progressed faster than anybody expected. And I think that's why you hear about trust, you hear about guardrails.
Yeah.
You know, being able to put some kind of boundaries on this, especially if you're talking about the telecom network. As you know, they're fairly risk averse.
Somewhat.
And I think
all it takes is one blip and it's sort of game over, or at least you're very damaged.
Yeah, and if you're talking about agents taking action without a human saying yes, do it, that's terrifying if you're a service provider.
Terrifying for me.
But yeah, it is. Me too. and that's why I'm not particularly. When people ask me, you know, are we ever going to get to the level 5? I don't think in my lifetime, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right.
There are certain things I think make sense to turn over. But I mean, look what happens anytime the cloud goes down, you've got people losing billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And imagine if you got all these agents running around willy-nilly. I don't know how you guys say that in
No, that's perfect. You're an honorary Brit using phrases like that.
But you know, the thought of all these agents running around without the proper guardrails is scary. And I think that is going to, again, rightfully put a brake on how fast this stuff gets implemented.
Yeah, and that reminds me of another podcast. You can tell I've been traveling. I've got through a few podcasts recently. This one's called All In, and it features a bunch of other tech entrepreneurs. And they were talking about Anthropic.
Yeah.
And there was a recent bit of news where I think the US government put some constraints or some export bans or something on them. And one of the things they were reflecting on, which I thought was really interesting, is Dario Amodei, who's the CEO of Anthropic, quite often comes out with what seem to be counterintuitively scaremongery things, especially when Mythos came out.
Yep.
And then I think it was probably my podcast co-host Ian Morris of Light Reading who pointed this out to me on a pod we did, that actually it's framed as a sort of clever bit of comms, because if you set it up as as sort of scary, that obviously just elevates it in terms of
Yes.
magnitude. But these other tech entrepreneurs are saying it's kind of backfiring on him now, because he's been bigging up the threat, and so now the U.S. government has just gone, well, in that case, we're locking it down.
Exactly. That was not the outcome they were anticipating.
No, so careful what you wish for. Anyway, that's my meandering way of saying, this trust issue is very contemporary across the board, not just in telecoms.
Oh, sure.
But I totally take your point. In telecoms, they're going to be especially risk averse.
Right, and as much as we as tech watchers want things to move quickly, when it comes to the network, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea.
No.
Just because, like I said, there's unintended consequences. When you have all these agents, you might have agents working at cross purposes, and it's just a lot of things that people have to think about before they kind of let them loose.
Yeah, and then you're getting agent to agent, so you're getting what I visualize as these sort of sedimentary layers of AI, where the original, for want of a better word, source code is buried right at the bottom, and then any little quirks or mistakes or inefficiencies then get magnified.
Exactly, and that's actually something that some of the vendors I've been talking to are trying to address that, because if you do something here that has knock-on effects, if it happens at this layer, it's going to propagate further up in the stack.
Yeah.
And you want to first identify it and mitigate it, and that the blast radius, as they say. I don't like using some of that kind of terminology, but in this case it's true. But the blast radius can be huge if things get, because it is all connected.
And then they're starting to use other agents to try and problem solve agents. So it all gets very
it's all very
over automated.
Yeah, it can do. So trust, I think it's going to be.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. What you've made a good point about full automation and how likely it is and whether it's even desirable. What about incremental trust improvements in the short and mid-term? What can be done to increase trust?
Yeah, well, I think, excuse me, one of the things that some of the vendors who are coming up with these solutions are talking about observability. They kind of use observability, visibility, and explainability all kind of in the same breath, but basically being able to understand why the agents or why the AI did what it did. We want to see the reason, and we want to see we want to see the steps that they went through, so we can understand whether they're doing it the right way. And I think that the vendors are heeding that call, but that's going to be really crucial for again thinking about network operations people trusting the AI. They want to know, is it going to do what I would have done in that situation?
Right, and then also, I suppose, leaving a paper trail so that when something does go wrong, you can work out where it went wrong.
Traceability, auditability. Yeah, that's a huge thing. I was at an event yesterday, and it was something that they were not harping on. They were making a point of emphasis on.
Banging on about.
Banging on. Exactly. That's the word. Banging on about that traceability. But again, if you understand service providers, you understand why that's so important. And interestingly enough, another thing that they were making the statement about why telecom is so different than the hyperscalers. Because the hyperscalers will say, oh, we've been using AI to run and automation to run our networks for decades. But what their network is versus what a telecom network is, regulated, mission critical, all that kind of stuff. Not that the clouds aren't mission critical, but it's a little bit different. That's not 911.
Yeah.
Right? It's not regulated at all to some degree.
Yeah, and in some cases, like, I don't know, the internet and streaming and that sort of thing, little quirks aren't a big deal.
Right. But it's all like one big network, but it's the same network and it's the same thing a million times.
Right.
As opposed to telco, the complexity is orders of magnitude different. So when they say, oh, well, we've done it, so you should trust us, so have us do it for you. I think they're simplifying a little bit.
So sometimes it just seems like it's not worth the hassle.
No, I wouldn't say that. You were mentioning I just recently published a report that looked at how service providers are using AI right now and if they're really getting benefits. Because I think it's important that we celebrate that yes, there are issues, but there are service providers today getting value that is quantifiable, even if it's not showing up in OpEx. And
Right.
that's kind of the narrative out
So
there.
there, make a believer of me then. Are there any specific examples
Oh,
that
sure.
you can think of?
Yeah, things like capacity planning used to be a very manual kind of thing. People are taking those processes from days to hours, sometimes hours to, well, probably hours, not quite to minutes for planning. But there are a lot of things, it's that kind of improvements in cycle time.
Right.
There are, one of the cases I had in there was about an operator that 75% of the issues that are coming in to the network ops center are able to go to AI. So the people only have to worry about the really hard, the 25% of hard things. That's not something that's going to show up on a balance sheet, but it's valuable. It's got,
Right.
that's got value to the service provider. And that's what I found in the research, is that it's not always just about OpEx.
Yes.
It's about productivity improvements. It's about customer satisfaction. Customer experience actually was the lens through which a lot of them are looking at some of these benefits. If I can find faults faster, my customers are going to be happier. Yeah. Will that show up in a churn number later? Possibly, but there are so many other elements. You can't always draw a direct line between we did this and churn did this.
No.
However,
well, that's why we have intermediate metrics like NPS and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, NPS, don't get me started.
I know, I find that weird. I don't even know how you calculate it.
It's just too simplistic.
For people who don't know, who are listening, Net Promoter Score.
Yeah. Like after you're on a customer service call, they say, how likely are you to recommend this to somebody else? I don't think that's particularly valuable. But the service providers do know that, fewer network outages means happier customers. Happier customers mean more revenue eventually. So the takeaway from that research really was that, as much as we talk about the impact of AI on OpEx, that's not the whole story. In fact, I published a blog on this, like, we've got it all wrong in the telecom industry, but no one's shot me down about that yet, which is interesting, or else they didn't read it.
Yes,
but
I'm sure they did.
But no, it's just that we get so focused on that OpEx metric, but when we talk to CTOs of tier 1 operators, it's not just about that. OpEx avoidance is a big thing. Being able to not have your costs grow, out of control as you scale something up. I mean, that's also got value. Helping them to turn off legacy systems. There's lots of operators trying to get rid of their 2G network or 3G network. How do you do that responsibly? AI can help you with that.
Right.
And so anyway, there's plenty of things, but again, those don't necessarily translate to this month our OpEx went down by 40%.
So
it's not
sounds to me, what I've taken from your summary of your recent work is a lot of the benefits are the more sort of broad cross-industry kind of benefits. But did I miss, are there very telco-specific benefits as well that you found?
Well, there are, if we get very specific about, energy efficiency in the RAN.
Right.
That's a big one. Yeah, there's lots of.
In fact, sorry to butt in with the RAN in general, as we get into the 6G era and using more and more high-frequency spectrum, which requires more optimization, all that sort of thing. I imagine AI play quite a big role in all that.
Yeah, and being able to automate a lot of that. Again, thinking back to the session I was in yesterday. When you have these events and all of a sudden you go from nobody there to 1 million people there, and they move around, how do you maintain their quality of service? A human being couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
So you've got to automate those things, and that's through AI. I mean, it's not the most, it's not rocket science AI, but it gets the job done, and it's something that would not be possible. We wouldn't be able to do it without the AI.
Yeah.
So there are some things that are very specific to like the network infrastructure. Like I said, I think about the beamforming, the spectral efficiency, all those kinds of things. Again, that need to happen at a scale and speed that just a human couldn't do.
Yes.
So there are some telco specific things, as well as I'm using Copilot, and that just makes us more productive. So we get both we get both. And I do try to separate them because I do think it's important. Because when people say, well, what are telcos doing with AI? Well, in what domain? Because there's the AI factories and AI grid, which is all valid, but that's not the same thing as what I'm looking at. I'm looking at how they can run and operate their networks and their business processes better, faster, cheaper, with happier customers.
Yeah, and it's so important to do that because it's such a ubiquitous term.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone, you just rolled your eyes. Same here. What do they call it? Slop.
AI slop.
Normally when people talk about AI slop, they talk about media that's generated by AI.
Yeah.
But you could just say the very use of the term has become sloppy, for want of a better word.
I tell people I can't escape it. It's my day job. But you pick up the paper, you watch TV, you watch a movie. AI is just it's in the zeitgeist, I think is the right word for that.
Yeah.
And it's and there's a lot of AI washing and all that kind of stuff. But that happens with every technology shift. That everybody jumps on it, and then it's like, okay, let's go one level down. And in fact, that's the session I'm doing here this afternoon. Is really how do you operationalize AI? I know that's a big word, but it's proof of concepts are easy because everything is very defined.
Yeah.
But when you want to go at scale, then everything changes.
Yeah.
And how do you do that, again, responsibly and efficiently and transparently?
Yeah.
All of those things. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of those discussions. So I've had them myself with service providers, and I'm looking forward to hearing about some other experiences because it is happening. As much as we all get impatient about it is happening. And just like with everything else, you start small, find a problem, see if it'll fix it, and then build from there. And that's what the best practice seems to be in talking to the service providers.
Yeah, and I would have thought your area of expertise should be very more in demand than ever, precisely because people are trying to sort the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah.
They're trying to, they're probably getting, we get, you hear about corporate examples. One thing that cracks me up, who was it? I think it might have been Amazon. They created some incentive structure for their employees to use AI. So they just started gaming it and just started getting AI to do pointless, redundant things just so they could hit their target and all that sort of thing. So everyone's getting pressure to use it. But I would have thought that the more pressure you are to use it, the more you'd want to consult with people like you to find out how to use it productively and properly and get your head around the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, if I can do that myself, but yes.
Yeah,
no,
well,
but
if you can't, we're really in trouble.
Yeah, no, I was speaking with a customer this morning. She's like, we're all learning this together.
Yeah.
And I said, that's true. And that's why we come to things like this. So I can tell you what I know, but I'm also hoping to learn what other people have learned.
Well, you've set up a good final question I got for you. This show.
Yeah.
So I've been coming to DTW for, I think, at least a decade. Certainly quite a few times when it was in Nice. And this is about the 4th iteration in Copenhagen, I think.
Yeah, 4th, yeah.
I presume, I've certainly seen you here in previous years. I presume you're fairly regular here. Do you have some sense of how things, if they are, sort of differ this year? What kind of incremental progress you can see this year in the conversations or perhaps even in some of the work that TM Forum does?
I think it's again becoming more about not what's possible, but how do you make it happen? And I think that's important because like I said, it's easy to talk about what could be. And I think the forum and the members and things are focusing on how do we get this again out of the labs and into production where we can start actually generating business value. I hate to sound like an MBA student, even though I was one. But that's really what it comes down to. Because if at the end of the day, another phrase I hate, if you're not...
That's a very English one.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, God. So we got them all from you. So what you're telling me.
We're to blame.
Yeah, okay. But at the end of the day, if they're not saving money or making money, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And so without that, it's just a science experiment.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And you do feel that there is incremental progress in that direction?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like there's a little bit more buzz and a little bit more realism,
Cool.
So hopefully I will be proven right. We'll see how it goes by the end of the week.
Right, yeah. Okay, well, that was brilliant. Thanks a lot for your time.
All right.
And I hope that session that you're doing immediately after this goes well.
Thanks
Cheers,
very
Roz.
much.